Content warning for today's case. This episode discusses premeditated murder, domestic violence, a child born in prison, and the brutal killing of a mother by her own daughter and her boyfriend. Please take care of yourself. This is the case of Sheila von Wiese-Mack. I want you to picture something. You are a taxi driver in Bali. It is a warm August morning. You have been sitting outside one of the most luxurious resorts on the island, waiting for two young passengers who stepped back inside to get something. They said they would be right back. That was over an hour ago. You have lost enough fares for the morning. You get out of your car, open the trunk, and you are going to take their suitcase inside and find them yourself. But the moment you touch the case, something is wrong. There is liquid seeping out of the sides, and then the smell hits you. And when you open it, you stumble backward, because inside that suitcase, folded and crushed into a space no human body should ever occupy, is a woman. Her blonde hair is matted. Her face is unrecognizable. Her arms and fingers are broken from the struggle she had tried to put up. She is dead. And the two young passengers who left that case with you, they are long gone. That discovery, on the morning of August 12th, 2014, would kick off one of the most jaw-dropping international murder cases in recent memory. A case involving a mother who loved too much, a daughter who felt too little, a boyfriend who was willing to do the unthinkable, and a plot for money that stretched across oceans, courtrooms, and nearly 12 years of legal battles that are, as of this recording in 2026, still not finished. Stay with me, because this one is something else. Before we go any further, I want you to know who Sheila von Wiese-Mack was. Not how she died. Who she was, because she deserves that. Sheila was born on June 10th, 1952. She grew up in the Chicago area and became what people who loved her describe as the kind of woman who made every room warmer just by being in it. Her close friend Elliot described her perfectly. He said Sheila loved old wine, old books, and old friends. And that tells you everything. Does it not? She was a socialite. Yes, wealthy, well-connected, always at the right parties and the right events. But it was never about status with Sheila. It was about people. Her home was your home. If you were her friend, you were fed. You were looked after. You were loved. She married James Mack, a celebrated jazz and classical composer who had worked on over 60 albums. Together, they moved in elite circles in Chicago, attending high society events and building what could only be described as a charmed life. And then Heather arrived, their only child. And according to everyone who witnessed it, Heather was absolutely everything to them. Sheila's sister Debbie said, "Of course they doted on her. My sister's first and only child. She felt so blessed and lucky. Every wall was covered in photos of Heather. Heather was, by her own description, a daddy's girl. She and James shared a deep passion for the arts. Music, theater, ballet. The world felt complete. And for a while, it was, in 2006, James fell suddenly and seriously ill while the family was on a cruise. A severe infection had spread to his spinal cord. He survived. But from that point on, the now 76-year-old man who had spent his life at a piano and in recording studios was relying on a wheelchair. Then came the colon cancer diagnosis. The family decided to travel to Greece, a trip for some rest and healing, a way to hold on to each other while they still could, and it was there, in a hotel in Athens, that James Mack died. He was alone in the room with Heather when it happened, a blood clot in his lungs. He stopped breathing almost instantly. Heather was 10 years old. I cannot imagine what that moment was like for her. Her father, the man she adored, the one who shared her love of music and art and creativity, gone in an instant. But here is where the story starts to fracture. Heather did not grieve in the way you might expect. She did not draw closer to her mother. She turned on her. She blamed Sheila for her father's death. She said it was Sheila's idea to take the trip, that James had never wanted to go, whether that was true or not. It became the story that Heather told herself, and she kept on telling it. For years, as Heather moved through middle school and into her teens, The relationship between mother and daughter deteriorated in ways that Sheila was completely unprepared for. This was not normal teenage rebellion. This was something else entirely. Heather skipped school constantly. She stole Sheila's car. She stole her money. She began running with older, rougher crowds. She dropped out of school. She got pregnant at least twice. She was arrested more than once for underage drinking. And the physical violence, Sheila's sister Debbie described it as awful. Heather would bite her mother, hit her, shove her. At one point, she pushed Sheila so hard that Sheila fell and broke her arm. Police records showed 86 separate incidents where officers were called to the family home. 86. And every single time Sheila was asked whether she wanted to press charges against her daughter, she said no. She had already lost her husband. She could not bear to lose her child, too. There is a heartbreaking email Sheila sent to a friend during this period. She wrote, "Heather was violent today and left. Very scary for me. And I am always worried about her. When you live the way that I have lived with Heather for so many years, the problems become your almost new normal way of life." She then wrote, "I am really scared of what she may do next." She was scared of her own daughter, and yet she kept showing up, kept providing, kept loving. That is the kind of woman Sheila was. At 18, Heather crossed paths with Tommy Schaefer at a party. Tommy was 21, an aspiring rapper who went by the name Tommy XX. He had no steady income, no clear plan, and an attitude toward Sheila that he made absolutely no effort to hide. He hated her, and Heather was already primed to feel validated by someone who reflected that hatred back at her. From the moment they met, the two were inseparable, and the dynamic between them was deeply troubling from the start. They called each other Bonnie and Clyde. They spoke to each other in messages full of violence and dark fantasy. Sheila tried everything. She sold their house and moved to the Gold Coast neighborhood of Chicago to physically separate Heather from Tommy's influence. It did not work. Now, here is something you need to know about the money. James Mack, in the period before his death, had updated his will. He left a substantial trust fund worth approximately $1,500,000. The terms of that trust were significant. Heather would receive small annual payments until the age of 30, at which point she would receive the full remaining balance. But there was a condition built in. If Sheila were no longer alive, the timeline and terms shifted considerably in Heather's favor. In Heather and Tommy's minds, there was one person standing between them, their freedom, and that money, and they started talking about it. 6 months before the murder, Tommy sent his cousin Robert Bibbs a message on Facebook. He wrote that Heather is crazy. She asked me to find someone to kill her mom for $50,000. Read that again. 6 months before Sheila was murdered, a plan to have her killed for $50,000 was already being discussed. Robert Bibbs did not go to the police. He stayed involved. He would later plead guilty to advising the couple on how to carry out the killing. In the months that followed, the conversations between Heather and Tommy escalated. In the days just before the trip, Tommy was making comments about drowning Sheila and smothering her with a pillow. And still, Sheila kept trying. She decided to take Heather on a trip to Bali. 10 nights at the 5-star St. Regis Resort in the upscale Nusa Dua area. Business class flights. A beautiful island. A chance to reconnect. On August 2nd, 2014, mother and daughter boarded a plane. Photos from that flight showed them smiling, arms around each other, happy, or at least performing happiness. Neither of them knew that this trip would end in tragedy. Well, that is not quite true. One of them knew. They arrived in Bali and checked into the resort on August 9th. And for a few days, there were more photos of them looking happy. Dinners, excursions, arms around each other, but the hotel staff were seeing something very different. There were arguments, loud ones. In public areas of the resort, in the rooms, guests could hear the shouting. And what Sheila did not know was that Tommy Schaefer was already on his way. Heather had stolen Sheila's credit card and used it to book Tommy a $12,000 business class flight from Chicago to Bali. He checked himself into an expensive room a few floors above them, also billed to that stolen card. On August 8th, Sheila emailed her friend Elliot. She wrote, "I have been waiting for the car to pick us up. Heather ran off a few hours ago and cannot be located. I discovered she visited the clinic here and fraudulently signed my name for prescription painkillers 4 days ago. She secured quite a supply. It seems I am more frightened than ever. She was frightened. In Bali, in a luxury resort, and she still had no idea that the person she feared most had already flown in to find her daughter. Tommy arrived at the resort on August 9th. Having spent his long flight drinking heavily in business class, he messaged Heather immediately. They met on the beach. They kept texting each other as the hours passed. Tommy drained the hotel minibars. He kept drinking. By the early hours of August 12th, 2014, it was just before 2 in the morning. The resort was quiet. The lights were low, and somewhere in the hotel, Sheila was in her room, finally settling down to sleep. But the young couple was still moving through the hotel. They briefly separated, then met again at 3:15 in the morning. And that is when Sheila appeared in the lobby. She had come looking for Heather. She was animated, clearly in a panic. She walked right into Heather in the lobby and pulled her by the arm back toward the room. And while Sheila was in the room, the texting between Heather and Tommy continued. They were both egging each other on, both talking about the money they would have. The plan, initially, was for Heather to do it herself. Tommy texted her, "Try your best. Can you whack her in the head with a big pole?" Heather responded, "I know what is in my control. I know her habits. I know what she does at certain times. It is like breaking out of jail. It takes several years of watching. I have been watching her routine. I am sneaky. I am smart. I watch. Trust, Bonnie. Do not make everyone else's mistake and underestimate me." But she could not do it alone. She told Tommy she needed him there. Tommy found a heavy fruit bowl in his room, glass with a metal handle. He tucked it under his shirt and came downstairs. Sheila was in bed. Drifting off to sleep, Tommy crept into the room. Heather covered her mother's mouth, and Tommy struck her in the head 12 times. Sheila von Wiese-Mack did not die from the blows themselves. The injuries to her face caused her airway to become blocked. She suffocated. She was 62 years old. After the violence was over, Heather and Tommy wrapped Sheila's body in the bedsheet. Then they crushed her into the small suitcase, with Heather sitting on top of it to force it shut. An hour later, they were at reception with the case. A taxi was waiting outside the resort. The driver was hoping for a fare. Heather and Tommy handed him the suitcase, told him to wait, and walked off. CCTV cameras captured all of it. The taxi driver waited and waited. Over an hour passed. He got out of the car and opened the trunk. And the rest you know. The morning of August 13th, just hours after the suitcase was found, police traced the case to Sheila through luggage tags and hotel records. They learned she had been staying at the Santam Bay, Regis with her teenage daughter. They learned Heather had checked out abruptly without reporting her mother missing. Heather and Tommy had checked into a nearby motel using their real names and Sheila's credit card. It took a few hours. At just before 8 in the morning, a police officer posing as a hotel housekeeper knocked on the door of room 1701. Tommy answered, hungover and barely awake. They were both placed in handcuffs immediately. Their story was that Sheila had been killed by masked robbers who had somehow managed to target the family in the middle of a secured key card access 5-star resort, but that Heather and Tommy had conveniently been able to escape. The CCTV footage dismantled that story within hours. The case went to trial in Indonesia, and it became a global media event. Heather was, by this point, several months pregnant with Tommy's baby. They sat in the Denpasar district court as Indonesia considered whether they should face the death penalty by firing squad. In Indonesia, there are no juries. Verdicts are decided by a panel of judges. The judges focused heavily on what happened after the murder. The deliberate concealment, the choices the couple made together, the absence of any genuine spontaneity in the act. Tommy admitted to killing Sheila, though he insisted it was self-defense, claiming Sheila had grabbed his neck and choked him. Heather's position shifted constantly. At times, she admitted involvement. At other times, she denied it. She eventually settled on a version where she had been hiding in the bathroom while Tommy attacked her mother, and that she had helped conceal it because she was scared of him. The judges were not convinced by the idea that this was a sudden, uncontrollable act. They were right. The trial briefly paused when Heather gave birth to a daughter she named Stella. When the verdict came in, both were found guilty. Heather was sentenced to 10 years in prison for assisting in the murder. Tommy received 18 years for premeditated murder. They avoided the firing squad. And here is where this case took another deeply strange turn. Heather was sent to Karabokan prison in Bali. And while prison is never supposed to be comfortable, the footage and photos that emerged of Heather's time there were genuinely hard to believe. She had access to social media. She uploaded videos of herself smoking, dancing, eating fast food, and laughing with other inmates. She held parties. She let her infant daughter Stella appear in her videos. In one video, she held up a bottle of soft drink and joked about it, completely unbothered. This was a woman who had been convicted of helping to murder her own mother, and she gave interviews. Multiple ones. Her story kept changing. First, she said masked robbers did it. Then she said she was in the bathroom. Then, in a recorded interview, she said something that genuinely floored me.
I don't regret killing my mother. And as evil as that may sound, that's my reality. In my heart, in my mind, my soul, in my blood, in the oxygen running through my body, that I wanted to kill my mother. When I was 10, my mother killed my father in a hotel in Athens, Greece.
She claimed Sheila had killed James, Sheila's close friend, went on record with the death certificate.
This death certificate for Heather's father, James Mack. It gives the cause of death as pulmonary embolism, a blood clot in the lungs.
James Mack died of a pulmonary embolism, a blood clot in the lungs, a natural cause of death in a sick, elderly man. Elliot said it simply, it is the kind of statement that does not even warrant a response. It is such an absurdity. Meanwhile, in a separate interview, Heather flipped the script entirely and claimed she was the one who killed Sheila, and that she had ordered Tommy to help clean up afterward. And Tommy, from his prison cell, has reportedly shown nothing but remorse. He admitted what he did. He said if he could take it all back, he would. He even turned down parole, saying he needed to serve every year of his sentence. He maintains, to this day, that Heather was the mastermind, that, without her, none of this would have happened. In 2016, Robert Bibbs, Tommy's cousin, pleaded guilty to conspiracy to commit murder in exchange for $66,000 from Heather's inheritance. He was sentenced to 9 years in prison. In October 2021, after serving 7 years of her 10-year sentence, Heather was released early for good behavior. She thought she was going home. She was wrong. She had been indicted in the United States back in 2017. The indictment had been sealed. She had no idea. When her deportation flight landed at O'Hare International Airport in Chicago, the Federal Bureau of Investigation was waiting for her. She was arrested on charges of conspiracy to commit murder in a foreign country. The look on her face, from footage captured that day, tells you everything about how unprepared she was. Her attorney called it double jeopardy. A former federal prosecutor said otherwise. She had been convicted in a foreign jurisdiction, but the United States had its own laws about conspiracies to kill American citizens abroad, and Sheila von Wiese-Mack was an American citizen. Her daughter Stella, then 6 years old and having spent the first 2 years of her life inside a Bali prison, had been living with a foster family in Indonesia. She arrived on the same flight back to Chicago. In June 2023, Heather Mack stood before a judge in a United States federal court. She pleaded guilty to 1 count of conspiring to kill a United States national overseas. In court, she made a statement. She said, "I cannot take back what I did. I am not the same person I was 10 years ago. I understand the love my mother had for me." She said tearfully that becoming a mother herself helped her understand what Sheila must have felt. Sheila's siblings were in that courtroom. Her brother said it was the first time he had ever heard Heather apologize. In January 2024, Heather Mack was sentenced to 26 years in federal prison in Chicago. With her time served in Bali, she will likely be in her mid to late 40s before she is released. She is currently being held at a medium security facility in West Virginia. Her projected release date is March of 2044, and then, on February 24, 2026, Tommy Schaefer was released from Karabokan prison in Bali after completing his sentence with remissions for good behavior. He was immediately deported back to the United States. He was arrested mid-flight as his plane landed at O'Hare Airport in Chicago. 2 days later, he stood before a judge and pleaded not guilty to federal charges, including conspiracy to commit murder, conspiracy to kill a United States national, and obstruction of justice. His trial date has been set. The final chapter of this case is still being written. I have sat with this case for a long time, and there is one thing that keeps coming back to me. Sheila never stopped trying. 86 police callouts to her home, a broken arm from being shoved by her own child, emails to friends saying she was terrified of what her daughter might do next. And she kept going. She bought Heather cars and clothes. She took her to Bali. She tried therapy, psychiatric facilities, new cities, and fresh starts. She gave, and gave, and gave, and Heather took it all. There is something in this case that speaks to a very particular kind of grief. The grief of loving someone who is actively harming you. The grief of a parent who cannot accept that the child they raised is beyond reach. Sheila's sister Debbie said it best. She said, "I just cannot wrap my head around the way she died and what they did to her poor, sad, dead body. I look at a suitcase differently now. I still travel, but it is always there. It is always there. And that is what violence does. It does not just end a life. It changes how survivors move through the world. Forever. Sheila von Wiese-Mack deserved better. She deserved a daughter who could have worked through her grief with her. Not against her. She deserved more time. She deserved to grow old. She deserved to see her granddaughter. Stella. Take her first steps. Say her first words. Go to school. Instead, Stella was born in prison. She has grown up without her mother free, without her father free, and without the grandmother who would have loved her absolutely and completely. Stella now lives in Colorado with a maternal cousin of Heather. She is 11 years old, and we can only hope, sincerely and deeply, that she is surrounded by people who love her, and that her life is as full and as safe and as warm as it deserves to be. Sheila built a life around bringing people together, making everyone feel welcome, and pouring love into the people around her. That is how I want to remember her. Not the suitcase, not the resort, not the trial. Sheila, the woman who loved old wine, old books, and old friends. Thank you so much for watching this one. If this case is new to you, I hope this gave you the full picture. And if you have followed it for years, I hope this felt like the thorough, respectful telling it deserved. If you found this video valuable, please hit the like button and subscribe if you have not already. Your support genuinely helps this channel keep going and keeps these stories reaching the people who need to hear them. Comments are open below. Tell me what you think about this case. Where do you stand on Tommy's upcoming trial, and what do you think will happen next? Take care of yourselves out there, and I will see you in the next one. Sheila von Wiese-Mack, June 10th, 1952 to August 12th, 2014. A devoted mother, a warm and generous friend, a woman who filled every room she entered with love and laughter. You were loved. You are remembered. You deserved so much more. Rest in peace, Sheila.